Penguin Random House Canada presents Talking to Canadians, a Memoir by Rick Mercer. Read for you by the author. For Gerald and George. Introduction. This is a memoir. Because of that, I relied on my own expert testimony. It is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Kind of. 3 people walk into a bar and spend an evening together. 25 years later, each of them will have a very different version of what occurred on that night. Or I should say, 2 of them will. One will swear on their mother they were not in attendance and, in fact, out of the country at the time. When faced with photographic evidence to the contrary, they will simply say, "Well, that's not how I remember it." Under the guise of research while writing this book, I called up many old friends and colleagues and questioned them on their version of events, curious to see whether theirs conformed with mine. For the most part, they did, but sometimes they did not. Always the conversation took strange and wonderful turns, and we always went down roads entirely irrelevant to anyone but us. It was grand. For those calls, those catch-ups, I shall be eternally grateful. If I have any advice, it's pick up the phone and place those calls. You don't need to be writing a book to do so. Like most Canadians in the entertainment business, and all Newfoundlanders in any business, all I ever wanted in life was the opportunity to go to work. And work I did, and I was fortunate to work in the field of my choosing. I understand this is the equivalent of winning the lotto. That it happened was only possible because I stand on the shoulders of giants. I speak of the actors and writers and show business pioneers in Newfoundland and in Canada. This is my version of events. Some names have been changed, some locations have been altered, some reputations have been protected. Regards, and thanks for watching. Rick Mercer, Chapels Cove, Newfoundland and Labrador, 2021. Prologue. October 1990, Ottawa. The hotel is called the Beacon Arms, but I've only heard it referred to by locals as the Broken Arms. It's the kind of place where you know instinctively upon entering your room that you should keep your shoes on. The carpet looks like a crime scene. For the past 3 days, a small Kentucky Fried Chicken box has been sitting on the floor of the elevator. The cover is off, and inside there is a single chicken breast and a French fry on a plastic fork. Earlier this morning, on my way down for coffee, I noticed the box was still there, but someone had absconded with the chicken. There is a Yuck Yucks comedy club in the basement. I wonder which Canadian comedy legend was peckish last night before bed. I'm up at this hour because my one-man show is about to be reviewed on CBC Radio. The publicist from the National Arts Centre is up early as well. She wants to pull a quote from that review for ads that are being placed in tomorrow's newspapers. The quote will also be plastered on the show posters that will go up all over downtown Ottawa. They are hoping for something along the lines of, "Run, don't walk, to the NAC." At home in Newfoundland, the CBC Morning Show is going to carry the review as well. Newfoundlanders are always proud of anyone who does well on the mainland, and they love the narrative of a young Newfoundlander having a hit show in, of all places, the National Arts Centre. The host of the Ottawa Morning Show teed up the segment with a pretty flattering introduction. There is a one-man show at the National Arts Centre which is getting a lot of attention in political circles. Why? Well, he continued, it is a comedy about, of all things, the Meech Lake Accord. Can a constitutional crisis be funny? Well, let's find out. In the studio is theatre critic Brian Gosnell. He is here to review Rick Mercer's Show Me the Button, I'll Push It, or Charles Lynch Must Die. A very kind setup. I was feeling pretty good about this. The show the night before had gone really well. Great, in fact. We had a full house. People laughed in the right spots. I didn't rush, which I tend to do. I felt like I killed it. It might have been the best night of my life. The reviewer began to speak. Actually, I'm not going to review the production I saw last night at all. That got my attention. I'm out of bed now, bare feet, on the dubious carpet. Instead of a review, I'm going to read an open letter to Mr. Mercer. I hope he is listening. I was listening. He cleared his throat for effect. Dear Mr. Mercer, Show Me the Button, I'll Push It is not a play. You are not a playwright, nor are you an actor. Please leave the theatre. You have nothing to offer. This was followed by literal radio silence. It was both the shortest and the worst review in the history of Canadian theatre. How lovely that the folks at home were able to hear it. Leave the theatre, you have nothing to offer. I stared at an unsettling stain on the ceiling and thought, the hell with this, I'm going into television. Which I did. Luckily, the standards are much lower there, so it worked out well. Chapter 1. Middle Cove. Opening night for me was October 17th, 1969. I share a birth date with Broadway legend Angela Lansbury and stuntman Evel Knievel. Show business was in the stars. I arrived exactly on my mother's due date. Being punctual is something I've continued to be my entire life. Eventually, mother and child traveled 25 minutes outside of the city of St. John's to the community of Middle Cove. This is where my father was putting the finishing touches on the house he was building. My father is not a carpenter. He would never describe himself as such. He just built our house with his own hands because that's what men of his generation did. He also dug the hole for the well. Tricky work. They don't call Newfoundland and Labrador the Rock for nothing. A few feet below the topsoil, you hit the earth's crust. In order to get to the water below, Dad crawled into the shallow hole, packed it with dynamite, crawled back out, hid behind the pickup, and lit the fuse. Having no experience with dynamite, he took the precautionary step of nailing sheets of plywood over the living room windows in case he blew the front off the house. Inside, behind the plywood, my brother and sister would have been doing whatever it is that 4- and 6-year-olds do. Family lore has it that I slept peacefully in my mother's arms through multiple explosions while the earth rumbled and rocks rained down on the house. I have always been a good sleeper. My ability to sleep through anything and everything is legendary, and my knack for sleeping while sitting up has been a huge asset in my career. When you spend 25 years banging around the country in planes, trains, and automobiles, it is a lifesaver. Show me a seat in a single-engine Cessna, I'll show you a good spot for a nap. Wake me when the storm is over and we're on the other side of the Rockies. Sleeping sitting up is a skill I honed to perfection during my entire scholastic career. I have no memory of my father building the house, but growing up I watched him not only head to work for the provincial government every day, but also build barns and fences, pour concrete, do electrical and plumbing work, and roofing and masonry. I watched him replace a motor in the car in the driveway. I watched him bake literally tens of thousands of loaves of bread. Currently in his 80s, he's building the boat he's been threatening to build his entire life. The boat, nearly finished, is in the shed he built for the purpose. Next to the shed is his garden of potatoes, tomatoes, carrots, and lettuces. I can do exactly none of the things my father can do. My occupation is that of pretending and talking. Also typing. I have the hands of an Egyptian princess. During the pandemic, when everyone was locked away in their homes, it became very evident to me just how useless I was. My lack of true skills was alarming. I called my father and said, "My water boiler broke, and repair people are not allowed to come inside the house." He said, "Do you have any tools?" I thought about it and replied, "Yes, I have a corkscrew and some glow sticks left over from Pride." In a crisis or a pandemic, nobody ever shouts, "Is there someone pithy in the house?" Fraser Ellis, the father of my great school friend Don Ellis, once said to me, "I remember when you and Donald were teenagers. Comedy skits and punk bands is all you cared about. I used to watch the two of you walk up the driveway, and I would think to myself, what in the name of all that is holy will become of those two?" And then this compliment, years later, "For a man with no discernible skills, you've done well for yourself." It's true, and nobody is more surprised than me. I was not what you would call a gifted child. It would have been a stretch to call me an average child. On paper, I was, if anything, well below average. Not that long ago, my mother surprised me with a memory box of report cards. She had, it seems, lovingly saved almost all of them. She passed them over with a great measure of pride. Why? I have no idea. These were not yearly progress reports. They were a cry for help. Not so much from me as from the teachers. Going by the teachers' comments alone, I'm sure I would, by today's standards, qualify for every juvenile psychiatric condition going.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?